Want to fade away into the scars on lights on my bones.
Hello and welcome to the Stedman podcast. And it's a beautiful afternoon here in Virginia. We had a lot of rain the last couple days, and now it's just all nice and sunny, but very windy out there. Um, but today I want to kind of talk a little bit about just kind of the political climate. Again, like I think out of all the episodes I've done, very rarely do I talk about politics because frankly, I think it's just almost like pouring oil over a fire sometimes, especially in our current political climate. And you look at, especially this week, this week's been just very interesting just to see how the ugliness of politics. So let's see, we knew about the impeachment trial with President Trump, and we found that he was acquitted of the two charges that were brought against him. But then again, there was some things about the witnesses. There were some questions about that. Even with Mitt Romney kind of voted yes for an impeachment on one of the two articles of impeachment. The whole Republican Party was just like, how dare you? Been seeing news sources out that Sharon Brown, who's a Democrat from Ohio, said that, just in closed door meetings, that this was done out of fear to keep the president around and not to impeach him because they were afraid. And it's like, okay, like whether that's true or not, I don't know why people are having closed door meetings. I know it happens. And if you're a Democrat and you're saying that, is it true, or are you just trying to continue to stir the political pot? Then we saw the State of the Union speech, and we saw just kind of the Trump not shaking Pelosi's hand to her ripping up the copy of the State of a Union address, just all these different things that was going on. And then even just look at the Iowa Caucus. I was just curious to see, like, okay, kind of this is, again, originally being from Ohio, we know that during election time, how during election time how it's like whoever takes Ohio basically wins the election. So it's like, okay, that's interesting to see how that plays out. But at the same time, you're just kind of like, all right, cool. Like even now, I'm just looking at it. They're still counting. Right now, it's like a 99.94% reporting. And I just did this search just a little bit ago. So it's like kind of like this. And then you're also seeing that there's some people that are. And then, of course, like, out of all the names I've heard from my Democrat friends, like I have no idea who this I'm going to mispronounce his name, but who this Pete Buttigieg, or I don't know, Buttigieg, I don't know how to say his name. But how like I never heard of this guy before, and all of a sudden he's at the top. So now there's like people are getting mad. Bernie's like, hey, my people counted and the numbers are off. Something's fishy's going on. And it almost seems like there's just so much tension within our political structure. And when I think about all of this, like I'm reminded of a verse in Matthew. And let me see if I can find where it is in Matthew. I like to read it verbatim. I don't like to kind of paraphrase, even though I know this verse very well. Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah, it's in Matthew chapter 7. And it says, do not judge or you will be judged. From the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred, and do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So, when we look at this phrase, this, and it's a weird parable that Jesus is teaching here. I mean, he starts off by "Don't judge others," and here we're kind of seeing this play out within. I think we're seeing this play out not only in the in the political realm, but really we're seeing this play out in our communities, even in our churches sometimes, even in doctors' offices. You see this kind of playing out where you don't have the full story, and it is very easy. It's very interesting because, um, a lot of times we don't necessarily get all the information. And that's the interesting thing about truth, because with truth, if you know something is true, then you don't question it, right? No one questions something that's true. If you say the sky is blue, people aren't going to question that. Maybe there might be some scientists who might, because they may know more, and they may say it's like a indigo, bluish indigo. Who knows what they may say. Um, if you know something's a lie, then you're going to call it out. You're going to be like, "Yep, that's a lie." But when you have half truths, when you have stuff that sounds true, but you know that there's something missing or something's off about it, then that's when people begin to start gossiping. That's when people start making their judgments about certain things, even though they don't necessarily know what's going on. And when I look at this, I so when I look at the words of Jesus, I'm always captivated by just how, everything always has to start with self-examination, right? So if I'm hearing stuff, or if I got half truth and I'm going to make a judgment call on something, the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to look into myself. The first thing I'm going to do is I have to do self-reflection and go, okay, is anything that's being said true? Is the situation that's happened, I'm having a big emotional reaction. Why am I having this big emotional reaction? Okay, so they're thinking about it. And then I think after that, that's when you can kind of not only make a rebuke, and I'm not going to say judgment, I will say rebuke. You can then make a rebuke against another person who may be doing wrong, because you've kind of examined yourself first, removed all the hypocrisy out of your system. So then when I go to someone, I'm not going to point the finger and go, "Hey, you," but I'm going to say, "Hey, man, I know this is what's going on. I've been hearing this. Let's talk, let's get stuff together, and let's just kind of figure out what's happening here. I care about you, so I want you to be able to do the best that you can do," right? So if that is the case, then man, things are going to take off well. If it's not and even if the other person may be like huff, 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 but at the same time, that's on them now, because you have already kind of removed the sawdust, or you kind of removed the log from your own eye, so then you can kind of point the sawdust in someone else's eye. So I think I want to so when we so what does this have to do with our political climate? Well, when you see everything that's going down, I think it's very important first to always look at multiple resources. I remember being in oh, I can't even remember the name of it now. I was in college. It was some type of international class. I can't even remember the name of it now. But basically, we had a country that we had to give reports on, and I had Lebanon. And they said, okay, look at what, your American newspapers are saying about Lebanon. Look at different sources there. Look at sources overseas, and then, especially now, Google Translate was slowly starting to kind of get back, starting to kind of become a thing, or it's still in its infancy. But, go look at a Lebanese newspaper and click on stuff. And it was very interesting just to see how things are being painted, especially with the group Hamas, which is a terrorist group. But it was interesting because you could look at stuff from the BBC and they'd have their things, but you could look at stuff of a Lebanese newspaper and they're making Hamas sound like that they were absolutely wonderful and fantastic. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, huh, Interesting. Why is that? And, you have to ask yourself, is it because we in the Western world have a misconceptualized view of what's happening in Lebanon? Or is there a or is Hamas kind of paying for newspapers, so then they're kind of communicating positive propaganda? I mean, I don't know. And again, like there really wasn't, when I was taking this class, there really wasn't a lot of activity happening in Lebanon until after I graduated college. And then all of a sudden, things just started to explode, literally and figuratively over there. So it was just interesting to see that. So my challenge for you today, as I sign off, is just to always, anytime when you hear something, anytime when you're about to make a judgment, first you need to self examine yourself first. Make sure, okay, what if what I'm hearing is true, then let me go to the source. Let me try to find more truth because there's something that seems a little off. And once you do that, then hopefully you'll get a better picture and you're better to make a more accurate point of view or a judgment on what's actually happening in the world or in your communities or about a person that you may care about. So just remember, make sure you clear out the hypocrisy in your own self before you start pointing out any faults in someone else's. All right, guys, that's it for me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be on next week with another podcast.